The King's message of unity for the 7/7 attack anniversary, and asked the question whether the UK is actually any safer 20 years on from 7/7. We remember those absolutely horrendous attacks that involved 52 people being murdered, 700 injured after the bombs detonated on the capital's public transport system here in London. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, the London Mayor, Sir Sadiq Khan, laid wreaths at Hyde Park's 7/7 memorial this morning, marking the time the first bomb exploded. That was at 11 minutes to 9 this morning. Sir Keir said the country would unite to remember the lives lost in the suicide attacks and all those lives that were changed forever. The King's message called for a spirit of unity. He said the attacks had shown the importance of building a society where people of all faiths and backgrounds can live together with mutual respect and understanding. The King said his special prayers remain with all those whose lives were forever changed on that terrible summer's day, including those who carried the physical and psychological scars, and certainly we remember them today. I want to ask the question about whether the UK is any safer any safer 20 years on from 7/7, and no better man to answer that question than Will Geddes. But let's just hear from the Mayor of London, Sir Sadiq Khan. He spoke just before that service took place to remember the victories today.
I think it's really important to mark 20 years since this horrendous, horrible terrorist attacks on our city. They shook our city. It's right that we remember 52 people whose lives were cruelly cut short by these cowardly acts of terrorism. Of course, and prayers with all of us are with their family and friends. Their lives will not be the same again. We honour the survivors and the bereaved, but also we should pay tributes to the emergency services, the transport workers, those heroic, ordinary Londoners who ran towards danger, but selflessly and bravely supported those who'd been hurt on that day.
Sir Sadiq Khan there, the Mayor of London. Well, Will Geddes is with us now, the security expert. Will, we all remember that terrible day. I was actually in South Africa when it happened. I remember watching what happened on CNN, and it was just absolutely horrendous. So many people very, very worried. Taff in Dover was in touch earlier talking about his son who was at university and those horrible times when he didn't know whether his son was safe. We've heard so many stories today, so many reminders of that awful day. Are we safer now?
Well, it's a very difficult. Thank you, Peter. Thanks for inviting me on the show this afternoon, particularly on today. It's a difficult question to answer because in some regards, yes, we are, but in other regards, not. And I can cover either side depending on your preference as a priority.
Go for both. Go for both. Give us both sides of it, Will.
All right. So on a positive side, there were a lot of lessons learned. This was a heck of a situation. I was actually in London on 7/7 when this terrorist attack actually took place. And it was a brand new surprise pretty much to everybody as to how this particular attack was materialized. And the question really that was raised on this was, it was the first introduction of suicide bombs in the UK, which was a huge, huge, huge shock because we'd never seen that before. We were very used to the provisional RA. Now, where it worked effectively and very, very well was in terms of how the blue light services could coordinate and work together in these types of events. Now, those lessons were further learnt in the wake of the Manchester Arena bombing, obviously in 2017. But since those times, certainly we've seen how the coordinated efforts between domestic intelligence, MI5, the Metropolitan Police and Counter-Terrorism Command, and the various supporting blue light services and regional counter-terrorism teams have been able to coordinate. Now, that's the good thing. On a negative side, Peter, the big problem that we have is, unfortunately, we are bound by, firstly, the European Court of Human Rights, which is enabling those that are getting into this country illegally. And that is something which, you guys cover on a daily basis on Talk, that we have such a huge problem of undocumented foreign nationals, particularly from many of those countries that have been those responsible, or from those countries have been responsible for terrorist attacks in the UK. And we have a number of people here who could potentially create harm. And we have a security services and police service that are simply not expanding sufficiently and financed and supported sufficiently to be able to be commensurate in its response to dealing with this increasing threat.
So essentially the systems are in place, the people can work together better than they did 20 years ago, but the resources just aren't there.
Absolutely, and you know, even Eliza Bullingham, who was the former head of MI5, or the head of MI5 at the time of
Money
obviously.
and Bullard, you mean?
Yes, sorry, correct. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Forgive me. She, by her own admission, said that they could only cover as many of the priority persons of interest that they had their eyes on. Now, we know the attackers on 7/7 had been on the radar of the security services, but they just simply didn't have the resource to be able to monitor them as well. And they had people who were of a higher or greater priority.
And that is often the way, because the first question that people ask when there is a terror attack or an attack like this is this person on the security services radar? So many people are, thousands, tens of thousands of people are on the radar, but in terms of actually following that person, monitoring them and so on, that takes an awful lot of time and effort from the security services and to a lesser degree the police as well. They can't look after everybody, or they can't look out for everybody, and they can't examine the behaviours and actions of every single person. Yet, of course, the security services often get blamed when things do go wrong, even though those actions, in theory, could have been prevented.
Absolutely, and Peter, the biggest problem that we've got is that the whole of those that can slip through the net is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this government, the government that we have in place, is just simply not robust enough. They are not dealing with these issues in a stringent sense, in terms of obviously dealing with individuals that are deemed to be threats, that are individuals that are illegally here in the UK, do not have permits or licenses to be here in the UK, and are not being taken out of the country, not being extradited back to their countries, or returned to their respective countries. So, you know, in terms of the threat, Peter, I don't want to be the harbinger of doom, but we're in very, very sensitive and very dangerous times right now, because we not only have a huge number of individuals in this country that the security services are going to have to monitor, but we have a weak government that is not taking a strong enough position on this.
Will, thank you. That is Will Geddes there, security expert. Thank you for that.